In this frantic, chaotic and often cynic century, a world scenario of social and environmental crisis is the setting for a series of unusual events which have been appearing ever more frequently to speak to man's awareness. Those whose attention has been drawn to these events have been wondering whether the vision of reality as is presented by science is real or the result of a dogma destined to crumble as events develop. In this context, a major role is given to some unusual patterns which appeared in varied crop fields in the early 80s, mostly wheat fields in many parts of the world and above all in England. As the configurations started to appear in more and more fields and forming complex patterns, more and more researchers were more interested in the study of this phenomenon. Among these are those who will lead us to the uncovering of their unique characteristics, the well-known British engineer and researcher Colin Andrews, considered a leading expert on the international scene with regard to this particular phenomenon. The German anthropologist Dr. Michael Hesemann, a world-known researcher of the UFO phenomenon and of the crop circles, the Italian journalist Adriano Forgione, editor-in-chief of the magazines UFO Network and Dossier Alien, at the moment one of the best national experts as regards the analysis and the interpretation of the message contained in the symbols of these amazing configurations. These investigators have largely contributed to the study that is slowly shedding light on the secrets behind one of the most fascinating mysteries of our times. It seems incredible that the extraordinary phenomenon of the crop circles should appear each year at regular intervals, in the same period and often in the same fields, as a result of which a true tourism of the circles has developed. Consequently, each year a swarm of enthusiasts and onlookers gathers in the British fields, as if the event of these configurations were a normal event. The regularity of the phenomenon is not found in other types of unusual phenomena which have engaged our attention, including the UFO phenomenon. Moreover, unlike the elusive nature of the UFO phenomenon, the characteristics of the crop circles are easy to identify and to analyse.
The great thing about the crop circle phenomenon in some ways is that so very often in investigating aerial phenomena, you rely upon the credibility of an eyewitness seeing a UFO. You are in the hands of their experience, their truthfulness or otherwise. It's a flinching glance. Here you have a phenomenon which is recorded on the ground. You can go and you can touch it. You can measure it. You can analyse it.
Thanks to this, it has been possible to establish its authenticity incontrovertibly. Thus, it is apparently inexplicable the indifference or the discredit of the international scientific community, of the mass media, and of the same institutions which act as if the phenomenon were the product of the fantasy of some fanatic or the pranks of some fellows, and thus deprived of any social or scientific interest. An attitude this that surely has valid but unknown motivation. We will try to find out what they are with the help of experts. The first sporadic news about crop circles were heard in the 60s in Australia, only to become regular by the 70s. At first they appeared as plain and small circles, and by the mid-80s they appeared in composite groups. They constantly increased in number up to 1989 and spread worldwide, but mostly in southern England, in the counties of Wiltshire and Hampshire. In 1990, there was a quantum leap. Over 1,200 circles appeared. They came in complex patterns and different shapes, thus called pictograms. Their symbolism, more marked, has led the scientists to believe that this phenomenon carries a message.
Offenbar ist das Phänomen von einer Phase, in der es einfach unserer
Certainly, the phenomenon has developed from a phase that wanted to catch our attention.
Phänomen klar war, weil viele Menschen gedacht haben, es wären UFO-Landestellen. Von dem Moment an, wo die Welt
And in which it was clear the connection with the UFO phenomenon into a new phase, the communication with symbols.
der Kommunikation mit Symbolen.
The diameter of the crop circles varies from a few centimetres to a few metres, and as much as 300 metres across, as found on surfaces measuring over 10,000 square metres. They appear mostly from spring to the end of the summer. In other words, the time it takes the crops in the fields in which they appear to reach a certain height and maturity. The circles appear in varied fields: plain tall grass, oilseed rape, barley, oats, and above all, wheat fields. The official science, in the person of some scholars, or so they are defined, has explained the crop circles as the work of man's doing or the result of natural causes. At first, this phenomenon was attributed to the gags of pranksters, to whirlwinds, to something that is best known as mushrooms, or to other theories, more or less credible. One such theory stands out. Dr. Terence Maiden has stated that the circles are caused by some hypothetical plasma vortices which, descending from above, press the notorious circles into the fields. This theory was given some credit, but, as if in reply to Dr. Maiden's theory, soon after some very complex shapes appeared, and this theory rapidly fell. The most striking aspect of this phenomenon is that the crops are flattened with great precision. The edges of the circles are clean, as if drawn with an enormous compass. The lines are neatly drawn, as if a giant ruler has been used. The crops inside the circles are not damaged, snapped, or broken. The stalks are bent down to a few centimetres from the ground and shaped into spiral patterns and continue to grow until they are ripe in the new horizontal position. Mostly these patterns are in layers or follow a weaving effect. Various pictograms are aligned in a way compared to elements appraisable only at great heights, and such are some conformations of the soil, archaeological sites, and underground waterways. To all these elements, which are noticed at first glance, are added the results of the analysis made on the crops and on the soil taken from within the crop circles, on the energy fields present within the area of the pictograms and in close proximity of the same. These results confirm even further the anomalous nature of the phenomenon and its non-human origin. Inside the crop circles were picked up magnetic fields with values 300% higher than those picked up outside the pictogram, which gave results on the order of 5 millitesla. These energy fields often influence the electronic equipment of TV crews who have been inside the patterns. Even the crops and the soil involved directly with the phenomenon manifest a number of anomalies, which suggest that the action of some kind of unnatural energy is involved. The soil tested has shown abnormal levels of radioactivity, and the microscopic analysis made on the plants have shown heightened modifications on the molecular and crystal-like structure. In addition, inside the plants were found some spots caused by dehydration. The plants also manifested different effects depending on the period in which the crops were exposed to the mysterious energy which creates the crop circles. With young plants, the seeds do not reach maturity and die. With the plants which have reached maturity, the seeds become sterile. However, in both cases, the seeds are deformed. On the other hand, if plants have completed maturity, they grow much more rapidly and become stronger and healthier than the others. The American biochemist Dr. Levengood, a well-renowned researcher from the University of Michigan, has found that with young plants, the cells of the stalks have knots which are more visible. The knots are bigger in size and the stalks bend at a more sharp angle compared to the plants taken from outside the pictograms. Dr. Levengood has examined various samples and has been able to reproduce the same effects by placing some healthy plants in a common microwave oven for a few minutes. Thanks to this simple experiment, he was able to prove the theory that the deformations found on the crops from inside the pictograms were caused by some unnatural force. The kind of microwave oven we use can reproduce only some effects seen on the plants, but the figurative component, as well as mathematical, geometrical and symbolical, can only be caused by an intelligence capable of producing an energy wave containing a series of information reproduced on the soil of the pictograms. The engineer Colin Andrews first authored such theory in 1998 as a result of some outstanding findings made during an experiment carried out in Germany. When a bowl containing distilled water was placed inside some crop circles. Later, when the water was examined through a spectrograph, it showed that the water molecules would arrange themselves according to a pattern which reproduced the basic pattern of the pictogram inside which it had been placed. It was as if the water had memorized the data contained in the energy field which had generated the pattern pressed in the soil. In the photograph we can see the disposition of the water molecules. All this gives us an idea of how difficult it may be to realize some credible hoaxes.
It is very unlikely that a faker could manage to create these patterns on a big field during the night, in the dark. If you then enter a faked circle, you realize that the plants are not laid down but broken. They are not bent, they are not deformed. In the faked circles, we don't have many chemical and physical anomalies. In addition to this, when some of the most complicated crop circles were analyzed, they turned out to be created with a very complex geometry.
To this effect, the English space engineer Roy Dutton has discovered that the spiral on which are laid down the stalks correspond to a precise mathematical model, which is repeated in all the genuine circles. What's more, the spiral inside the circle is part of a vortex in contraction, while the line marking the edge of the outer circle, outlining the pattern, is laid in the opposite direction. In various complex pictograms of the single circles was found the mathematical progression by Fibonacci, in which a number is the sum of the preceding two. This means that the diameter of a circle is equal to the sum of the diameters of the two preceding circles. What's more, these particular formations are spirals developed according to the golden section. Some geometric proportion considered as sacred in the past and used in the construction of ancient temples, which gives a special harmony to all this, is realized following this parameter. In the 90s, some of the pictograms which appeared were real fractals. These diagrams are obtained by complex mathematical calculations represented by a computer graphic and show some surprising analogies with the forms we know in nature. They are complex diagrams which are impossible to calculate even in small dimensions without the help of a computer. And the pictograms we are seeing are some real fractals, not their representations. The first one appeared on the 13th of August 1991, nearby Cambridge, the renowned university where the founder of these complicated diagrams taught, the mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot. His very colleagues at Cambridge University stated that, given its perfection, the pictogram could not be a hoax.
The Mandelbrot set itself is, as you know, a fractal, and it represents that state which exists as a geometry recorded by powerful computers, placed together into a pattern. It represents a state, and that state is the very boundary between order as we know it and chaos. But of course, you know, the more we're learning about chaos, chaotic order is in fact a form of order. It is a phase that order goes through, which we call chaos. But the fractal represents the boundary which exists between those two states as they move from order into chaos and from chaos back into order. And I think it is very important that we do understand what happens when order breaks down into chaos.
The American professor Hawkins has established that the geometric relationship between various patterns contained in some pictograms is identical to the mathematical relationship existing between two notes on a piano. In other words, some pictograms are the figurative correspondent of a sound impressed on a wheat field. Other important elements have been found by Dr. Richard Hoagland, the known American researcher and NASA consultant, best known for his studies on the monuments found on Mars in Cydonia Valley. He found that there is an astounding correspondence in the mathematical and geometrical components of the Martian monuments and archaeological remains found in the ancient sacred site of Avebury in England. According to Hoagland, the topographical disposition of these two sites, Earth's and Mars, are overlapped, as if both areas came from the same mother plant. After analysing the mathematical and geometrical structure of some patterns formed on crop circles, Hoagland has found the same mathematical and geometrical components on the basic constructive project of these patterns, also found on the monuments in Cydonia Valley, on Mars and Avebury in England. It was as if the ancient builders had returned and given us news of it through the crop circles.
Well, Richard Hoagland and myself have been in contact for maybe 4 or 5 years, looking at not just the geometry of the actual crop circles, but their placement. He is particularly impressed by the precise placement of some of the major crop designs in the vicinity of Avebury. Their alignments and the placement of the crop designs with relation to that area in Wiltshire, England, as an overlay onto the Cydonia area of Mars.
A correspondence based on tetrahedral geometry, which was considered sacred in the past, and based on its parameters, other very famous constructions of ancient times have also been edified, such as Teotihuacan in Mexico, the Giza pyramids in Egypt, and Stonehenge in England. In addition, the studies carried on the renowned pattern Mother of All Pictograms, which appeared in England on the 16th of July 1991, indicate that this extraordinary formation contained all the mathematical and geometrical constants of the Cydonia Plain, as well as being the Earth's bidimensional counterpart of the Great Pentagonal Pyramid, found in the Martian Valley. In addition, this pictogram symbolises the principle of the three-in-one, that is to say, the divinity, as we can see in the corresponding esoteric symbol.
We have recorded accurately many designs, including Barbary Castle. There is no question that it is a tetrahedron, that its geometry does fit Richard's work.
Having established that this is a real phenomenon, we now need to know what its purpose is.
Once you have eliminated the hoax theory covering all of the phenomena, the one thing that you are left with facing you, and it smacks of it throughout, is that it's a message. We begin to see that there is information which is decodable by two routes.
Numerous patterns formed by the circles in the cornfields are still a mystery to the researchers, whereas many others have been deciphered and the message they contain revealed. This has been represented by astronomical symbologies common to ancient cultures such as the Sumerian, the Egyptian, the Celtic, or to some ethnic groups such as the Aborigines, the Dogon, or Native American Hopi. Symbologies which have expressed some real philosophical, esoteric and spiritual concepts. The researcher Adriano Fulgione will lead us to the finding of the meaning of some extraordinary pictograms of the most recent years.
From the time these complex symbols first appeared on the ground, I knew that they conceal the message and that this message could be uncovered again because it appears that these intelligences have already used the same symbols belonging to the human culture, symbols which are perhaps gone or which belong to some ancient civilizations or to forgotten cultures. Thus, I was convinced that although it was a complex message, it could in some way be interpreted. The different symbologies certainly had a common denominator, us. This has led me to research further and investigate even more until I found the key of interpretation for a good part of these formations. But not all of them, as some of them are quite hard to interpret, or rather we don't have the key to uncover them. Nevertheless, most of these are today easy to interpret, and I believe I have contributed to this decoding.
The fact that the circle is the basic pattern of the crop circles from the start of the phenomenon is not a coincidence. In all ancient cultures, the circle represents the oneness of creation. That is to say that behind an apparent diversity, there is an inmost link among all things.
We must consider the fact that all the ancient civilizations, even the surviving tribal cultures, have used the circle for their religious ceremonies or moments of communion, and thus of special energy communication.
One of the first composite circles appeared in the county of Wiltshire on the 10th of September 1988. This belongs to the ancient religious tradition of the Celts. It represents a cross within a circle, and it signifies the predominance of the spirit over matter. Subsequently, many more patterns appeared, which were relative to the reinstatement of the contact between sky and earth, and the return of very advanced beings coming from the cosmos, which were the masters, the instructors of great past civilizations. The most beautiful one appeared in England on the 24th of July 1992. A logos of the sun, a sun symbol, which also contains a sign resembling the Sumerian cuneiform script. It is called Din Yer, and it means the righteous ones with the heavenly chariots of fire. A symbol which was seen by the American Deputy Marshal, Lonnie Zamora, on the back of an alien spaceship as it landed in New Mexico on the 24th of April 1964. It reappeared in 1999 in a gigantic 300 meters long pictogram. The sun symbologies are more predominant in the pictograms, surely due to their deep spiritual meaning.
The symbology of the ancient civilizations has the sun as a symbol of light, which is meant not only as light of the divinity, with God as the creator, but also the inner light, that which man carries within and that he must uncover. The Maya were reported to have divided the world in 5 different historical cycles, and each cycle was called sun. Presumably, we are at the 5th sun and should enter the 6th one, which should clearly correspond to the new Golden Age, or the era of Aquarius. Numerous crop circles on the ground have a common denominator, which is the sun. For instance, there are Indian symbols in particular. This is a formation found in England in Silbury Hill on 23rd of July 1997, and as you can see, this symbol is very similar to a swastika. Which we find perfectly repeated in a hoppy bowl, which has a sun valence. It is a solar representation. We find the same figures of the sun in 1998. This is a sun with 33 rays. The sun symbol is important, but not as much as the 33 rays surrounding the sphere. As a matter of fact, the number 33 is very important in that it marks the end of a cycle. Or if we want to talk in terms of the esoteric symbology, it marks the end period of initiation for an initiate. It is the highest level of initiation. What does this mean? It actually means that the present sun is at the end of its cycle and should be entering a new sun cycle. This is clearly announced by a number of imbalances, upheavals which will actually involve the sun. Indeed, great sunstorms have been announced for next March, which will clearly bring about a number of energy changes to planet Earth. From a point of view of the sacred geometry, this pattern represents the third day of Genesis. It appeared in a field in England in June. What is its meaning? According to what the Bible tells us, on the third day of Genesis, God created the earth to completion, so that it was fit to host man, but without man. There were animals, trees, and all the life-sustaining elements necessary for the being that would in some way inherit it. What does this tell us? It certainly is not a message from the past, but rather it is a message that must be interpreted for the future. Thus it is possible that sooner or later our planet would be purified. As we go on with the study of sacred geometry, the last pattern is the so-called flower of life, the 6th day of Genesis. This is also one of the patterns of the crop circles. And it represents the creation as a whole. During the 6th day of Genesis, God handed the earth over to man, the man perfectly created, man and woman. What does this convey to us? In effect, man will inherit a new earth and a new world, a better balanced world and a better balanced man, perhaps more in line with what are the dictates of creation, with the cosmic energies, the divine energies. Of all the esoteric symbols, this formation is the most outstanding. It is both an esoteric and fractal symbol. As you can see, inside this formation one can perfectly circumscribe the seal of Solomon, that is to say, the 6-pointed star. The two overturned triangles perfectly set one inside the other. The triangle pointing downward represents the female principle. The triangle pointing upward represents the male principle. Clearly, these are my explanations already known in the esoteric field. Both moulded, one inside the other, represent the man-God, the perfect man who will inherit the new earth. Thus, this man must manifest a consciousness resembling the Christ of 2,000 years ago, Christ's consciousness. A confirmation to this is found in this formation, in which the seal of Solomon presents a snow crystal within. The snow crystal is formed by a 6-pointed cross, also called Christ's monogram, and it perfectly repeats the shape of a crystal. Moreover, if we made a semantic research, we would see that both the words Christ and crystal have the same phonetic root. What this means is that Christ, who manifests himself by the way of the Father, must also manifest himself to man. And the snow crystal is none other than the materialization of this concept. A crystal is solidified water. It is water which practically, from a spiritual level, manifests itself onto a physical level, and thus man, or the 6-pointed star, will have to manifest Christ's consciousness within in order to inherit the earth. This concept is also seen in another formation of esoteric type, but with the same meaning. This is the flashing star. Even the 5-pointed star represents man, whereas the flames represent the search for perfection. Thus man who aims at perfection. Consequently, it is man who will inherit the new earth. It isn't a message meant for the future, it is meant for today's man. The man who can still act in order to change the energy chaos this planet is unfortunately manifesting. As we've already seen, the star represents man. Man is perfectly inscribed within a five-pointed star. That is to say that the five-pointed star is circumscribed within by a set of dark and light petals. What does this mean? The floors of Masonic temples and Christian churches are very often formed by dark and light stones, and this has a precise esoteric meaning. The light represents the female and the dark the male. Thus, the five-pointed star means that man must absolutely maintain the two complementary aspects of man and woman, and thus point towards androgyny, not necessarily by losing his sexual attributes. Rather, man must manifest the female soul part that he has within, whereas the woman must manifest the male soul part that she holds within, so that both may find an equilibrium. We have already seen with the six-pointed star, which represents the male and female principles, both interlinked. Here also we have the same type of message. The five-pointed star with its point upward represents the male. The five-pointed star with its point downward represents the female. Thus the linking together of the two aspects of man. Moreover, both are capable of creating life. Man and woman are, in fact, the two poles that can manifest life, that can procreate. And here we have the key of life. The Egyptian Ankh is the so-called key of life, and is connected with what I've just said, and that is the capacity of manifesting, of procreating a new man, not only on a physical level, but also on a spiritual level. The Egyptians knew of this, and so do the intelligences who are imprinting on the ground these symbols. The Tree of Life, which also appeared in 1977, for those who don't know it, has various meanings. From a microcosmic point of view, it can represent the energy spots of man. On a macrocosmic level, it can represent the creating forces of the universe, or in any case God, the Sun and his manifestation on earth, with all his angels that evidently accompany him, and therefore the various cosmic forces which assist him. It is a very important symbol, in that it effectively connects man with the cosmos. The link between microcosm and macrocosm has been the predominant theme in fractal formations, absolutely some of the most beautiful ones. Here we have a crop circle which appeared in 1977, the triple Julia, which in fact represents the triple spiral repeating the shape of a galaxy, thus the macrocosm. On the other hand, the microcosm has manifested itself by means of the formation of 17th of June 1996 at Alton Barnes. And here we also find a spiral pattern resembling the DNA, the double spiral or double helix of DNA, indeed the microcosm. As for the crop circle in Alton Barnes, which represents the double helix, we have a very interesting theory by the Mexican engineer Rodolfo Garrido, who suggests that this crop circle is a graphic repeating the movement of Jupiter and of its satellites. It is quite interesting that water was found on the satellites Id and Europa, thus life is possible even if on a microbiological level. Indeed, water is the carrier of life. It is the basic element that makes up all of life. Thus this finding could mean that life might be scattered throughout our solar system, but not only, in the cosmos as well. It is quite interesting that water was found on the satellites Eye and Europa. Thus life is possible even if on a microbiological level. Indeed, water is the carrier of life. It is the basic element that makes up all of life. Thus this finding could mean that life might be scattered throughout our solar system, but not only, in the cosmos as well.
On the night of the 23rd of July 1991 in Germany, in the vicinity of Grasdorf, one of the largest and most complicated German pictograms appeared. A few days later, a young man carrying a metal detector found inside the pictogram some metal plates on which was impressed the same pattern of the pictogram.
Nun gibt es in Deutschland sehr viele Menschen, deren Hobby das Schatzsuchen.
In Germany, there are many people who are used to search for treasures with a metal detector. One of these seekers had the idea to walk into the Grasdorf pictogram and see what would happen.
Drei der Kreise von dem Contrastspektrogramm Platten, metallische Platten von etwa 30.
Inside the pictogram, he discovered 3 metal plates of 35 centimeters in diameter.
Bronze und hatte ein Gewicht von etwa.
One of these was made of bronze and weighed 8 kilograms.
Der zweite war aus Silber und hatte ein Gewicht.
The second was made of silver, and its weight, if I remember correctly, was 12 kilograms. And the third one was of pure gold, and it would mean a weight of over 20 kilograms.
The pictogram and the symbol impressed on the plates are related to ancient German traditions.
Nun erwähnt die
It recalls the Edda, the Germanic mythology. It talks about the golden tables of the gods that would be found at the end of the times. So also in this case we notice that there is a connection between the ancient mythology and the crop circles phenomenon.
Regarding this pictogram, Adriano Forgione has made some new findings.
As a result of my investigation relative to the crop circles, which I am conducting with Alfred D. Princia, thanks to his theory that it is a puzzle, we were able to shed light on the Grasdorf diagram. In reality, it is a series of elements which are parts of a much more balanced figure, but separated one from the other and placed at random. Thus a true puzzle which, when reassembled, it forms the trees of life. Until today, we are the only ones who have come up with such a hypothesis, and we present it here for the very first time.
The passing of comets and other important astronomical events were considered by ancient cultures signs carrying great changes, purification. Even the crop circles have emphasized the importance of these phenomena.
Und wir haben eine.
These patterns have appeared many times.
Gerade in den Jahren 95, aber auch in diesem Jahr.
We have had representations of heavenly bodies, comets approaching the Earth.
Sich der Erde nähern und sehr viele Piktogramme haben sich auf die Sonnen.
Many pictograms referred to the sun eclipse. Indeed, they have enhanced the event.
Hervorgehoben.
When the comets arrived in the fields, before 4 new comets were discovered, we really did think that was pretty extraordinary. We had comets ahead of Contactee, Hale-Bopp, the Jupiter collision. All of those similar designs were appearing in the fields before they were discovered.
This is a very important finding, since it shows that the crop circles are not made only by fakers. They are not man-made, because they could know nothing about this. The makers of the crop circles must have a knowledge that is greater than that of man.
The messages conveyed by the symbolism of the crop circles repeat in an extremely similar manner the communiques delivered by contactees in the course of the years. Thus we could consider this phenomenon as a new and more evident form of contactism, in which the word is replaced by the charming and harmonic lines of these patterns. The message that is being conveyed to us by the circle makers is of importance. Indeed, it goes beyond its physical and scientific aspect. On these premises, we call upon what the Swiss contactee Billy Meyer reported about a flying object from the Pleiades, which left on the grass in Switzerland the 3 marks we are now seeing.
The tall grass is interlaid in a spiral shape, and the energy waves have been picked up to show that some kind of energy has acted on the field. In this case, we can say that these phenomena share the same origins, not only, but that here the message is stronger and that we have already found it in the contactee field. Although many ufologists tend to reject contactism as a phenomenon worthy of studying, I totally disagree with their position because, in my opinion, contactism is one of the keys of access to today's UFO phenomenon.
On the basis of the elements examined so far, we must point out that the alleged experts and the mass communication have acted in bad faith, in the way they have presented this subject.
This is unfortunately where you and I are sat here, but the masses, the public, have been contaminated by the irresponsible media that I've been discussing. And therefore, they cannot come to this judgment. If they have been told it is a hoax, then they are not attempting to understand what is there.
An attitude which is highly hypocritical and which implies a strong interest to conceal what is taking place on our planet. One consideration that can be made on the merits of the mass communications is that it is important that all get the right information. On this is based the advancement and development of the peoples, and whoever possesses the right information or the knowledge also possesses an extraordinary means of power, capable of conditioning the peoples to favour certain choices and lifestyles, even in the name of their own interest. The scandal of the two English pensioners, Doug Bower and David Chorley, erupted due to what had been published by a British scandal-seeking paper called Today, the 9th of September 1991, is a clear example of it. These two pensioners stated that they were the authors of the crop circles which had appeared up to then, and which comprise a period of about 13 years.
Clearly untrue. There was no way they could have produced, at that time, the peak of 15 each day. These are 265 they were, them, 65 years old. You cannot place across the whole country 15 circles in one day and be responsible for them. No way. I mean, it's totally impossible.
In order to test their reliability, they were invited to make the circles in the fields in the presence of eyewitnesses and movie cameras, but the outcome was quite disappointing.
We did the day after they did set this in the newspaper. We arrived with national television cameras, and we asked them to make one in front of the television cameras. And the one they've made, which I think you've probably seen, we took photographs of, I sometimes show it at lectures, everybody laughs. It is a mess. There is no symmetry, no beautiful symmetry. The plants are ripped out of the ground. They are shredded. It was made by these people. That proves nothing. It proves one thing, that what we have been looking at was not what they did.
Yes. Although one might accept the fact that these two might have made some pictograms, they cannot possibly have been the authors and accomplishers of the entire phenomenon. As a result of the researchers' persistence, they confessed to have lied in a private conversation, but refused to confess publicly.
Ich habe selber mit einem von den beiden, Dave Power, gesprochen.
I have spoken with one of them, David Chorley, and he himself has confessed that they too have seen many crop circles, that they have no idea about whoever can have created them, and that they have first observed the phenomenon and then reproduced it. As a matter of fact, their crop circles are ridiculous copies of the original phenomenon. Every researcher has identified them as hoaxes.
Nevertheless, even today, many people consider the two pensioners as the authors of the crop circles. What's more, Dave Chorley passed away due to a serious illness, and the pictograms are still appearing worldwide in greater number and with more beautiful patterns. The dynamics of these events are an indication of the methodology of discredit and debunking adopted against the phenomenon of the crop circles. Similarly, the phenomenon relative to the flying objects and the extraterrestrial presence on our planet is being boycotted, an attitude that does not reflect the actions government should take in the interest of all peoples.
Kontaktaufnahmen vorbereiten, vertraut machen. Schritt für Schritt Daten, Fakten.
They should reveal step by step data, facts, evidence, and they should stop this stupid debunking and ridiculing policy, which is, in effect, the policy of power.
Wissen bedeutet Macht. Und man will mit diesem Wissen natürlich schon, man will es in den Händen einer...
Knowledge means power. We are in the hands of an unscrupulous elite who govern the world policy, who secretly control everything.
Im Verborgenen steuert die...
If knowledge is synonymous of power, then it is very likely that the governments secretly analyse and study with great care this phenomenon, but withhold the results from the public opinion and make every effort to discredit the phenomenon in the eyes of the people. The evidence of this is given by the great military presence in those sites where the circles have appeared. Some anonymous black chopters have been spotted and photographed as they flew over the sites of the pictograms. They have also been seen in relation with some UFO events.
Und oft genug haben Forscher
Many times the researchers have seen these black helicopters chasing the small unmanned spheres that we believe are connected with the phenomenon, that are responsible for the phenomenon. Obviously, the British government has already discovered a long time ago where the crop circle phenomenon comes from.
In 1999, an unexpected initiative taken by the English government further confirms their hostility for this type of phenomena and for those who study them.
The civilian pilots who have flown with the crop circles researchers have only asked for petrol expenses, have then received some letters from the British government in which they were warned to stop this or they would have their flying licenses revoked. Today, the crop circle researchers can fly over the fields only with commercial helicopters at the cost of 1,200,000 lira per hour. That makes the crop circle investigation more difficult.
All these activities indicate that those who hold the strings of the world do not want to afford mankind the opportunity to realize that advanced civilizations are encouraging a change of heart on our part. If man became aware that it is possible to live in peace and concord, not waging wars, without battles of any kind, with true justice and equality for all, many privileges would immediately fall. It is therefore of importance not to be caught unprepared and pay attention to all the manoeuvres which try to conceal and discredit these extraordinary phenomena. It is necessary to investigate quite seriously and with great care and with great open-mindedness. Even the Italian mass media have treated this phenomenon in a superficial and summary manner, even being false and improper. One of the most reprehensible cases was presented in July 1999 by a well-known scientific magazine, and this was the doing of the Italian agency CICAP. The evident carelessness of the hoax shown in the article would invite a smile if it weren't for the damage done to the thousands of readers who believe in the trustworthiness of such a magazine. It isn't certain that the authors and the editor have acted in good faith. However, the extreme care in avoiding any element which was hard to explain concerning the real phenomenon would make one think that at least the authors knew exactly what they were doing and what result they were hoping to obtain.
It isn't a coincidence that the issue of one well-known scientific magazine out this month carries an article signed by Mr. Polidoro of CICAP, in which he explains that the crop circles are man-made. In my opinion, and I assume the responsibility of what I'm stating, the CICAP is acting in bad faith because there is a lack of information to the masses regarding this phenomenon.
Giorgio Bongiovanni and the editorial staff of the UFO, the Extraterrestrial Visit, have sent a letter to the same magazine in which they propose a confrontation in which to expose without any factiousness all the aspects of the phenomenon, but there has been no reply yet. In Italy, the phenomenon of the crop circles is practically absent. The photographs we are showing are relative to events occurred in the fall of 1995 in the province of Pordenone. However, almost all the components manifested by the phenomenon in England are missing here. The similarities of these interactions with the crop circles are only in their circular shape and in some effects found on the plants involved in the phenomenon. The accurate investigations carried out by the Italian researcher Professor Antonio Ciumento have brought to light the characteristic effects caused by the action of some form of energy comparable to microwaves. We note that in the same period in which these marks appeared, this area had seen an intense activity of unidentified flying objects.
There is grounds to believe that some extraterrestrial intelligent form has interacted in Arba, Malnesio and Maniago. It should be noted that in their vicinity is found the NATO base at Aviano, where in the past numerous sightings have been reported, which have not been explained.
As we've mentioned before, the link between UFOs and crop circles is considered valid by the researchers. In over 20% of the cases, there were sightings in the proximity of and in the specific sites of crop circles. There are footage showing small white spheres hovering over the fields where the crop circles have appeared. In the documents showing these objects, there is one that has caused a stir-up. In it, one can see some spheres flying over a wheat field, and in a few seconds, a pictogram appearing similar to a snow crystal. The footage was recorded at 5 a.m. of 11th of August 1996 by John Wabley, an English UFO enthusiast of the crop circles phenomenon in proximity of Oliver Castle in England.
Amazing.
Numerous controversies have been raised concerning the authenticity of the footage. However, the accurate analysis carried out by the American researcher Jim Dilettoso, an expert of computerized systems of video analysis, have not ascertained any trace of falsification.
My opinion on the Oliver's Castle video footage is that there is no evidence of a hoax. The key thing is that if the Oliver's Castle image was made digitally, that word digital says it went into a computer. In the vertical interval signal of the copy that we have, there is no evidence that it was ever digital format. So the point of the story is I find no evidence of a hoax in the Oliver's Castle crop circle formation, and I find enough unique and interesting things to think that it very well could be real and should be studied further.
Other researchers have challenged the authenticity of this footage, but so far no one has been able to furnish any valid proofs. What's more, the pictogram which appears in the video was real and contained the characteristics seen in the real crop circles. The only doubts persisting concern the unusual behaviour of the person who has filmed it.
So I am, unfortunately, as a researcher, not qualified in that field, simply to accept that Jim believes it, and others, it to be technically real, authentic, and yet the groundwork into the individual concerned is highly questionable. And I am so sorry not to be able to totally embrace it, because I'm a little unhappy with certain facets.
In any event, while we await a definite response concerning this footage, we can nevertheless watch what occurs in these cases, a behaviour which is consistent with the reports made by many reliable eyewitnesses who have seen this phenomenon as it was occurring.
Aside from the possibility that the video might be real or false, it certainly has shown what many people around the world have observed.
There are other footage, quite known by the UFO enthusiasts and UFO experts, in which similar objects are seen as they perform manoeuvres which any vehicle of earthly origin would be unable to perform. During the manoeuvre of the Apollo 17 on the moon's surface, one of these white spheres was seen hovering next to the earthly space module. This footage was filmed in January 1976 over the English county of Wiltshire during an experimental flight of the Concorde by the cameraman aboard a plane of the British Airways. In the 90s, these spheres were seen and recorded on film even more frequently in various parts of the world, an activity which is ever more increasing along with the phenomenon of the crop circles and of other extraordinary manifestations worldwide. The particular nature of these spheres and the potent spiritual symbolism manifested by the crop circles has led some experts to suppose that in reality the entities responsible for the crop circles go beyond the concept of alien civilizations, scientifically and technologically advanced, postulating that they could be of some entities so highly developed that they have totally sublimed the physical nature of their body onto a plane of pure energy, a concept that has become familiar to the public thanks to the experience of the contactee Carlos Diaz, but also largely spoken about by the contactee Eugenio Siragusa.
I personally think that this isn't a phenomenon of an extraterrestrial origin. It is more appropriate to say that they are a multidimensional or extra-dimensional intelligence. Thus, it does not belong to this plane of reality. Rather, it materializes from planes of a higher reality. Perhaps it is the most evident contact these multidimensional intelligences, these beings of light, are making with this mankind, and this kind of conclusion is derived from the interpretation of the message that the crop circles are conveying.
Through to the signs on the fields, in the fields, that if we are looking at another intelligent hand here on the planet Earth, we would, I think, be forced to accept that the connection between us and, we'll say, them, which could be a God force, could be the God force, that this is being done with total respect.
The impact of these magnificent compositions is many times described with a great emotional feeling, even by the most important researchers of the phenomenon, as if it were an enlightening, mystical or spiritual experience.
One of the really nicest experiences is when you walk into a formation. The feeling that I get when I walk in them, right from the beginning, has been that they were really special. At times they feel too special to actually walk in. You feel like I should stand here and just respect.
This particular sensation, which has changed the life of many people, including Colin Andrews, is not derived from understanding the message given by the pictogram, usually deciphered or understood only some time later. It would seem that these patterns are capable of instantly communicating subliminal messages, data that go beyond ego and reach directly the innermost part of man.
The representation of these wonderful patterns on the ground also implies some sort of contact or subliminal communication. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, a scientific news has especially affected me, which confirms some of Einstein's theories, and that is that the human brain, before understanding the mathematical concepts, transforms them into symbols to change them again in mathematical orders.
Per poi riconvertirli in ordini matematici. Questo cosa significa? Significa che il nostro cervello...
This means that our brain works by means of archetypes, of images, of symbols. In effect, a symbol can contain more concepts than a single number or a single phrase. This is true with the crop circles, where more concepts, more truths, more communications are put together inside a single element, perhaps in a circle with a star inside. This means that in effect these intelligences use these symbols to even communicate directly to our brain in an unconscious manner by reaching our subconscious. By seeing to it that whoever is ready to receive this type of message may in some way make it his own, even though not in a voluntary way, and thus strive to live in a context where some energies that are changing and can be channeled and used to heal the planet.
Vengono in qualche modo incanalate e utilizzate per la guarigione del pianeta.
Various experts believe that besides trying to amplify the awareness of mankind and warning them of the changes in course, the phenomenon represents some kind of energy therapy necessary to counteract the destructive effects of man's activities on the ecosystem. Truly, it implies a restoring the planet back to its equilibrium. This is also confirmed by the consideration that the sites in which appear mostly the crop circles, such as Stonehenge and Silbury Hill, are found on some energy lines of the planet similar to the meridians of the acupuncture on the human body. These sites correspond to focal points, particularly active, leading to the chakra of man. Chakra means vortex, spiral, and the same spiral is one of the most characteristic elements of the crop circles. It is remarkable that these energy lines of the planet, in their grid structure, are very similar to the famous orthotechnic lines, which represent the preferential routes on which travel and appear the UFOs, as statistically revealed by the known ufologist Michel.
Es gibt eine sehr interessante Verbindung zwischen den Kornkreisen und
There is a very interesting connection between the crop circles and an ancient science called geomancy.
Akupunktur betrieben. Sie haben die Ströme.
This ancient culture practiced acupuncture. It manipulated the magnetic energy of the earth thanks to certain areas where sacred buildings have been built.
Heilige Anlagen errichtet haben, wo dann Wirbel,
In these areas flows the energy that establishes a contact with the cosmos. They use this energy to make the soil rich.
die gearbeitet wurde bei der Fruchtbarmachung des Landes. Michel, ein großer französischer UFO-Forscher,
Michel, an important French UFO researcher, has observed that the majority of UFO sightings happen along these ancient lines,
stattfinden und dass offenbar die UFOs mit dem Magnetfeld der Erde arbeiten.
and that the UFOs work with the magnetic field of the Earth, and they use them like roads, like the railroad. And these are present also in the crop circles.
Various theories of what we've heard so far need a further scientific checking, but we can certainly say that the crop circles announce a change which is the dawn of this time. A change announced by innumerable signs and awaited by many people.
Everywhere I go, people say, I feel something big's going to happen. And you see, when I say it, my hairs are standing up on my arms, because I know that too. We are seeing in the environment, in the meteorology, in the weather and the climate, other signs of change. These, I believe, were just one series of signs which are referred to in prophecies from the Bible to other major prophecies foreseeing future events. The crop circle phenomenon, these patterns, I would call them maybe the cosmic artistry. They are just, but they are another layer of persuasive signs. Only, I think, until we are able to really establish who we are at the very, very depths of our being, to know what we represent, to know how truthful we are being, whether do we really want to resonate with this planet, or do we want to get as much out of it as we can and destroy it? I think it is giving us important information. I think it's demonstrating the new millennium, the new science. And the new science comes out of a new time, a new age, where we are resonating with nature, and we will be able to not only enjoy, but to have a quality of life much better than we have now through materialism.
In our opinion, the main message carried by the crop circles is this: the link or the new link with the cosmos, or the fact that man is a part of the universe, being microcosm within the macrocosm, of which he is a mirror image, will have to connect to this type of energies in order to be able to live in harmony with himself. It is a very deep message, perhaps taken for granted, but certainly hard to realise, since we sadly live in a society which tends to forget certain truths which are so profound and yet so simple. Therefore, we should follow the example of the intelligences that are communicating this to us and in some way apply it to our daily life for as much as possible, so that the human race may advance. Each one of us should do in our own small way what everyone should do. Each small action can contribute to the improvement of the situation.
Es wurde angekündigt von Jesus von Nazareth, dass am
It has been announced by Jesus from Nazareth that at the end of the times some signs in the sky and on the earth would appear that would make the whole mankind understand that an era was about to end and a new one to begin. All the prophecies refer to this: the third message of Fatima, Michael Nostradamus' prophecies, the messages of Garabandal, and so on. We have bleeding statues, stigmatas, we have people who have visions, Marian apparitions, we have an increasing number of UFO sightings. We have crop circles that appear in 24 countries all over the world. We have signs in the sky and on the earth, and we must be blind if we do not recognize that this has been announced at the beginning of the third millennium. If we as people are not influenced by consumerism, by greed, but by spiritual values, the values of Christianity, by the values of an authentic religion that we have to feel within us, then we as people could create a new age of brotherhood and justice here on earth. If we recognize that everything in the universe is connected by way of cause and effect, and if we modify our path, we can avoid all the prophetized catastrophes. We have to heed what is revealed, what is in the Gospels, what is told in the prophecies, and so on. We have to understand that we hold the destiny of mankind, the destruction or the construction of a golden age.
With words of hope and exhortation on the part of these researchers, we close this path that we hope has brought some light on a very important phenomenon of these times. A phenomenon which even in 1999 has not disappointed the expectancies of all those who await, manifesting compositions of a complexity, harmony, beauty and spiritual symbolism even more surprising than the preceding years.